Going beyond the headlines. Asking the questions you want answered. Exploring government policies and how they impact you. We are delving deeper.
Good evening and welcome to Delving Deeper. I am your host, Ayana Carter. This evening, we are joined by Mrs. Anjuli Tewari-de Fague, Foster Care Team Lead at the Children's Authority. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Hi, good evening. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you. All right, so firstly, let's talk about what is foster care.
Sure. So whenever I start talking about foster care, I usually say that foster care is not adoption. Because a lot of people, we say foster care and they hear adoption. And I want to make it very clear from up front, foster care is temporary, adoption is permanent. So to tell you what adoption is first, when a child comes into an adoptive home, that child becomes a permanent member of that family. That child takes on the surname of those parents and they stay there forever. It's a legal process. With foster care, what we are really trying to provide is a temporary space for children who need that safety, that stability, for a temporary period. So what we're really doing in the meantime is we are doing our investigations to find relatives, to see if we could address the allegations of abuse, of risk. So it's a child who's in need for that brief period, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what temporary can mean, but that's the main difference between foster care and adoption. One is temporary and one is permanent.
All right, so now that we have that straight, how many children in Trinidad and Tobago right now are in foster care?
So at present, we have 145 children in foster care at this point in time.
And are they all with relatives?
So no. So that's something we'll talk about as well, because there's two types of foster care. There's traditional foster care and there's kinship foster care. So traditional foster care, anybody can volunteer. You don't need to know the child. Once you've expressed us your interest and what type of child you'd like to foster, we would go through the screening process and add you to our register of approved foster care providers. And when a child comes into our radar who needs placement, we give you a call once we match you with your matching criteria. Versus kinship foster care, according to our legislation, certain relatives can be approved to care for children. So relatives who may need that additional support, not all relatives need support, but some relatives do need support. And to give you an idea of the relatives we're looking at step-parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, sister. And so it's really limited by the legislation, but those persons can be screened and they can be matched with their relatives. So I would say we have maybe about 30 to 40 children who are with relatives at this point in time, because kinship is fairly new.
Okay. Now, what type of scenario would have to happen for a child or children to be placed in foster care?
So there's lots of scenarios. So we could have a child who were abandoned, right? So we would have brought them into care, and in circumstances like that, we still are waiting to find relatives to see if we can find any sort of information about those children. They're children who are being neglected or abused. It could be physical abuse, sexual abuse, it could be emotional abuse. Children who've witnessed domestic violence, children who have no relatives who come forward, children whose the alleged perpetrator is still in the home. So we need to get them away from that danger. It could be a parent is ill, chronically ill and in the hospital, or mentally ill. So there's really a range of circumstances. A parent could be incarcerated. So there's lots of reasons why a child comes into foster care. It could be because the child has an additional need, such as autism or developmental delays, and the family just can't manage. So there's really a variety of reasons. So there's no one fit all, like what type of child is coming into foster care. And we have all types of ages coming into foster care. Newborn babies straight from the hospital, the parents have abandoned them, or the parents aren't fit for that child to be returned to, or even a 17-year-old who is just not stable and not able to stay in their home. And we're trying to give them a little bit of stability before they age out of the system.
Okay, so what would qualify someone or a family to be considered as a foster family?
So we always tell persons the main ingredient to become a foster parent is love. Once you have the capacity to love a child and the space in your home and your support systems, that's also really important. We have a lot of single foster parents, and they are excellent foster parents, but they're not doing it on their own. Support is so important, Kids have emergencies all the time, and we want to know if anything happens too. If you're not able to, you have your support network who can kick in. You are required to have a safe home. So it doesn't need to be a brand new spanking home. You don't need to own your home. You could be renting. It needs to be a safe space for the specific age of child you want. So say you want a toddler, and toddlers are up and about getting into everything. You have to make sure we have to make sure your home is not full of hazards. If you want a baby who's going to be in a crib, it's different. If you have a teenager who's sort of able on their own. So those are the different things that we look at. We need to make sure there's enough space for a child in your home as well. Also, we look at sort of your background. Have you had any criminal charges against you? Have you had any sort of run-ins with the law? Are there any threats existing in your home? Are you relatives with, anything to do with drugs? So we have to look at the safety in general. But regardless of all those things, the main thing is you have to be willing and able and committed. And I really want to stress that committed. We've gotten persons who've gone through the entire process, training, approval, and what they really want is adoption. Secretly, they want adoption, and they thought this was maybe a shortcut into, and it's not. It's two different categories of children we're dealing with. So we do ask persons, and that's how we do the training the way we do. We do an orientation first to really give persons the heavy-hitting stuff. This is what foster care is. We want you to think about it and see if it fits into your life right now. And then we go through the training process. We give you a lot of chances to say, no, this is not for me, I can't do this. And another fact to consider, with foster care, you have to be able to say goodbye. And that's a tough, tough one. And I think that's why a lot of people don't consider foster care, because people want permanency. They want to say, this child is mine, I'm investing in them, they're here forever. But I think it's really about changing your mindset. It's about thinking, I am giving this child a chance to heal. I'm giving this child a safe space until we give them this beautiful, amazing opportunity to go back to their families. I think it's so important to not deny a child the right to their family, and vice versa, a family to their child. So we are, and I think that's a little bit of a bad reputation foster care might have. People think we're ripping children away from their families, and that's not it at all. We are really trying to give families a chance, but we need them to work with us.
How long is the process from I guess, signing initial paperwork to saying, well, I'm interested to becoming a certified foster care provider?
So once you give us that call, so we really want you to make that call to us first, because we want to go through things with you, answer your questions, and then the first step is sending in your application form. That's the commitment that you're willing to start this journey with us. We then so I'll go through the process so you can kind of see what takes up the time, right? So we go through the application form, and then we ask for you to do a medical and submit a police certificate of character for all members in the household over the age of 18. We then do a home assessment to make sure the home is safe. We do in-depth interviews with all members of the household, including children. We need to make sure everybody's on board, right? Then we do psychological assessments. These are some basic multiple choice questions, sort of trying to gauge the potential for abuse, the family dynamics, the personality dynamics in the home. We also do background checks with a private investigator to go into your community to make sure what you're telling us is true. We also do reference checks, and finally we do training, some basic training before you get approved. So once you are open to all of those things, because you have to be available to commit to the training, to the assessments, once you're open and cooperate with us, you can be approved in as short as about 3 months. From start to finish, once everything goes smoothly and there's no delays or no red flags. Because sometimes we may go into the home, and whilst most things are ready, there's 1 or 2 things you might need to address. We try not to put people through a lot of expense, but for example, if you have a toddler in your home but there's no railings on the 2nd story of the home, and it's a huge risk, we would not want to chance that, and we would give you a chance to maybe build a railing or put up some sort of safety mechanism. So that would be like an example of a delay.
Okay, foster family is able to specify, because you mentioned that children may come in with special needs.
Yep.
and you have a variety of ages. So can foster families specify a certain age that they're looking for to foster children also?
Yep, so we don't want to force a child on anybody. This is voluntary. We want the child to feel comfortable. We want you to feel comfortable with the child. So we do allow you to specify the age, even the race, the gender, even health issues of a child that you may be comfortable with. So when we add you to our register, we know what you are interested in. Sometimes we may push the boundaries a little bit. So if you say, I'm willing to take a girl between the ages of 4 to 6, it doesn't mean I mightn't try to ask you, would you take a boy, or would you take a girl who's about 7 or 8, and you are willing to tell us yes or no. I would never force a foster parent to take a child, but I wouldn't, I would still try sometimes, because sometimes we are so desperate for placement. There are not enough placement options for the requests that we get. And I'm saying we get requests on a daily basis to place children in foster care, and absolutely we get a lot of patients who want babies because they think babies are cute and they have no issues and they're well behaved. But the truth is there's so many older children out there who need that love and stability. So we really are pleading with the public to consider older children. You know, they can be fun too. There's a lot of, you know, fulfillment from getting a child stable and seeing them thrive in a foster home. And even children with larger sibling groups, sometimes we have to split them up, unfortunately, because a foster parent may only be willing to take one. So we are really happy when persons say, I'm willing to take siblings, let's see if we can keep them together. And definitely, like you mentioned, we don't get many foster parents who want children with special needs. So we really find it's a blessing when we get persons who say, you know, it's okay that they have special needs, we'll work with you, we're open to the training, let's see how we can do this. And we're really working alongside the foster parent. We're not just taking a child, dumping them with you, riding out. We are there holding your hand through the process. A caseworker is assigned to you. We are there every month. You know, whenever you need us, we're at the end of the phone, we're doing monitoring, we're providing support. So definitely, it's really a team sort of around that child.
Right. And, you know, you mentioned that one of the features of foster families, they need to be able to say goodbye and let go. But how long can a child be placed? Is it indefinite? Are there certain time frames for various children, etc.?
Right, so one of the main things to remember is a lot of the times when we get, so for example, the children we placed last night, we don't know anything about them yet. We're still finding out, we're still investigating. So we don't know if there's family who's willing to take them. We don't know if it is that would be one night we need placement for, 2 weeks, a couple of months, a couple of years. So temporary really is a spectrum, and we have different types of foster care because of that. So we have emergency foster care, so where we can call a foster parent late at night and say, hey, are you able to take these kids in at short notice? And they say yes, so that can go from 1 night to 2 weeks. We then have medium-term foster care, which can be up to 6 months. And that means we kind of know the parents, we know the families, we're working with them actively towards reintegration. But then sometimes a child may actually stay in foster care until they turn 18. And we wouldn't know that from the start. It's because we've exhausted all attempts to make things work with their families. And it's only at the end of it we realize, and it doesn't mean their families don't love them or don't exist. It just means their families aren't able to care for them. And maybe foster care at this point in time allows that child to still sort of have their needs met, and still, we really do try to still have relationships with their families.
Okay.
So we would, keeping all details of the foster parent confidential, we would sort of do supervised access, even homestay visits. We sort of really do try to let children know their parents and know where they come from, because trust me, when they get older, they're going to want to know.
They definitely will want to know.
Yeah, so we really do try to make that happen once it's appropriate and in the best interest of the child and there's no risks involved.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that there are the different types of foster care. Is it that persons, when they apply, they say that I'm okay with being an emergency foster care provider or medium or long term?
Yep, so we ask persons to let us know what your interest in. Some people don't want short-term foster care. They want long-term, and we have to make sure they know that long-term does not mean adoption. You know, long-term still means there's a chance the child may eventually move, but we do try to look at those cases. Some cases come to us and we have a background information. Like if a child comes from a children's home, we may know significant information. We know this child isn't going anywhere anytime soon, but we feel a family environment is better for them. And I want to make it clear, we're not knocking children's homes in any way. They provide a relevant service and they really are trying the best that they can, but we're really trying to move towards something called deinstitutionalization. And that's something internationally, we're trying to remove children from those institutions and place them in family environments. So it really is my hope that one day, right now we have about maybe 80 foster parents, 80 to 90 foster parents. My hope is that one day Trinidad has more foster parents, that we're not pleading and begging and sort of squeezing children in where we can, and the go-to is foster care, as opposed to right now, the go-to tends to be children's homes. When we can't find place in foster care, we do rely on the children's homes.
What about children who can't get into a foster care type residence situation? How are they treated?
So when we get placement requests, we always do try to see if foster care can meet that need first, but ultimately we have so few, and because the majority of our foster parents currently have multiple children in their care, we do have to then go back to the department that deals with the children's homes to see if we can find placement there. But it doesn't mean that we stop trying for those kids, but because we're getting sort of daily requests, it's difficult to treat with children who are already in children's homes versus children who are coming in, abandoned in the hospital day by day. Every single day there's new children, absolutely.
Okay. And, recently we saw where 2 children had to be removed from their foster care providers. Where are those children placed and then what happens after?
So I want to give some context to that sort of headline, because it really wasn't so accurate in the sense that when a foster parent is approved, we do a series of vetting, as I would have explained, and then they're added to our register. Because somebody is vetted, it doesn't mean that they are squeaky clean and foolproof, but we've done as much as we can with regards to sort of ensuring their safety. In the 9 years that we've been operational, we have had 2 instances where we've had maybe an allegation or a question of whether the child was at harm. Not to say it was definitive, but once we have an inkling that a child is at any risk in a foster home, we would kick into our investigative mode. We would sort of, if we feel it's necessary, we would remove a child and either place them with another foster parent, or if there's no alternative in foster care, we would then look to the children's homes. And then we do our relevant investigations. We involve the police where necessary, and sometimes it may be that the foster parent, it wasn't an actual allegation, as opposed to they needed some more support and training, and sort of maybe looking at what we could have done differently to prevent that foster parent from being overwhelmed or frustrated. So it really is a sort of a broader picture. It's not just the headline, 2 children were removed from foster care. It really is about seeing how we can address if there are risks or any concerns, and seeing how best to meet the needs of the child and their safety.
Okay. Now, really, well, to me, this is the personal opinion here. Hearing about adoption and foster care in Trinidad and Tobago is relatively new. You said your department has been around operational for 9 years.
Yeah.
So what sort of issues, or what made that change? What fostered that need for that type of care to come forward now and persons to be more aware of it?
Sure. So actually, even though we've been operational for 9 years, foster care and adoption existed in Trinidad for a long time. But previously, so the Children's Authority became operational in 2015. Prior to that, foster care was under the National Family Services as a pilot project, very small, very informal. But once we took over, our legislation guided how we had to do certain things. So we had to standardize certain things. The vetting process is laid out. We can't take any shortcuts. We have to do those various steps based on the legislation. And then because of that now, if you think about it, across Trinidad and Tobago and even across the Caribbean, foster care or informal foster care is really something we've done for centuries. Yeah. Your grandma did it, my auntie did it,
oh, yeah.
Each of us have done it. In some way, our families have been touched. It's something that we do. It's something that we've grown up doing. But now this is a way to formalize the system, because as I was speaking to someone earlier, abuse happens a lot with people that you know, right? So just because you've taken in a child doesn't mean you're not capable of abuse. There's lots of people who have good intentions, who think, oh, that's how you raise a child. But maybe giving them licks till they bleed isn't a good parenting option, And we really want to screen persons, make sure you have the right motivation, make sure you're doing this in a sort of monitored, safer zone. And that's really what foster care is about, giving you that support, making sure we're doing it within standards, so it's not as loosey-goosey as before.
Yeah. So it's standardized,
Yes.
whereas, you know, you just have a child
Taking a
come
child. And there's
yeah.
lots of people who still do that, you know,
Yeah.
and I mean, I don't want to knock those persons, but the reason we're doing what we're doing is to sort of prevent those loopholes where people who have those good intentions and are known within the community to take in children, making sure that they get the support and making sure they're doing it the right way.
Okay. Now, how much money is spent annually on providing care for the children in foster care?
It's a big question, and I could not give you that response, but I can say, because every month we add more children and we add more foster parents, so it's growing. From when we started to now, it's grown significantly. We've done more than 200 placements since operational, and that's children coming in and out of foster care, some children staying till they're 18, some children aging out of foster care. So what I can say is, I know earlier I spoke about the support we give to foster parents. So we give a variety of support, and one of those is financial support towards the needs of the child. And I want to make that very clear, because we want to avoid the scenario where people are doing this and they think they're going to get a salary or the money's going towards them. When we do our checks, we make sure that the foster parent can financially meet their own needs. Your rent is taken care of, your groceries taken care of, your transport is taken care of. So when you get the child, the stipend that is paid to you is to meet their needs: education, medical, transport, and it's based on the age and needs of the child, right? If you have a special needs child, you would get a higher stipend. We tend not to tell persons what the stipend is because we don't want that to be the motivator. Some persons come to us and say, you know, I don't want a stipend, I just want to take in a foster child. But we do keep it sort of standard throughout all our foster parents. Every month, once a child is placed in your care, you do get a stipend. Also, we provide psychoeducational support. So if it is that a child is going through behavioral issues and you feel you're not managing, we want to make sure we give you the tools to do so. So we have psychologists attached to the unit who can provide that support. We provide counseling to the foster parent, as well as if the child needs any sort of therapy, behavioral therapy, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, or counseling, we put those things in place as well. Also, we do provide respite. So one of the types of foster care that I didn't mention before is, if a foster parent is overwhelmed, they need a little bit of a break. They have an operation to go through, they have to travel abroad, and they aren't able to take the child depending on the circumstances. We do have opportunities where you can place that child with another foster parent for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks until you're ready for them to return. So it's almost like the child going by an auntie or uncle who has been vetted, but it gives that foster parent an opportunity to say, hey, I'm overwhelmed right now, I really need a hand, do you think you'd help out? And we want, a lot of them they feel shy, they feel like they're being bad parents to ask, but we do want to encourage them, you know, we don't want placement breakdown to happen. So anything that we can do to sort of mitigate that, we will.
And kinship care, are we seeing where families are coming forward, you know, when they're alerted, maybe by your department or so, that, you know, one of their relatives needs some assistance in terms of housing? Are they willing to come forward? What is that like?
So we started Kinship Foster Care last August, and I would say, even though we did a big push through media and advertisements, we haven't really had many persons from the public contact us on their own volition. We've had a lot of persons within the authority in the other departments refer to us, cases that they're aware of, they've identified a relative who really wants to care for the child, but maybe they can't afford to, or they need that additional support, they refer to us. But I would say the public, I don't know if they don't understand it just yet, or because it is fairly new, they're not too sure what it involves, and maybe the circumstances don't lend to it because maybe the perpetrator is too close to home and they don't want to take on that burden. Maybe they don't want to be monitored by the Children's Authority. They rather do their own thing, you know? And I mean, it really is a voluntary thing. We're asking persons, but once you commit to kinship foster care, you are signing up to being monitored and supported by the Children's Authority. It can't be that you're taking the stipend every month, but you're not allowing us to monitor the child or speak to the child or see how the child is doing. It really is an agreement that you're signing up to be part of this program. You receive our training just like our traditional foster parents. So we really are trying to spread the word, because we do know there's lots of family members out there who want to help, you know? And I want to be very clear once again, it's not for family members who can manage on their own without the support of the authority. If financially you're able to take in a niece or nephew who needs help, there's nothing stopping you from doing that, you know? There's other routes we can go through, such as a fit person order that would not require the monitoring and support that the foster care unit would give you. It's not automatically kinship foster care, but if there's child protection concerns and if you do need that extra sort of financial support and sort of psychological support, the foster care unit can explore whether you meet the criteria.
Okay. What are some of your biggest challenges?
The biggest challenge is everybody wants adoption, right? So in the early days, we would do sensitization of adoption and foster care together. We've actually stopped doing that because the moment people hear adoption, they switch off. Foster care is like, why bother? I'm going to have to say goodbye. So it's really about sort of convincing persons that just because it's temporary, it's not a bad thing, you know? And that's something that we do in our training as well. Getting attached, so there's in the States for foster care, there's actually a hashtag, get attached. Because why are we acting like getting attached is a bad thing? We get attached every aspect of our lives. In work, we make work colleagues. In school, and we say goodbye. Saying goodbye is not a bad thing. It's knowing that you've touched somebody's lives, you've made a difference, and they move on. So it really is about giving them those supports to not have those negative connotations. I'm not going to say it's not going to be hard. It is going to be hard. Saying goodbye is tough, but we will support you through, and it's about seeing the bigger picture, knowing that you're giving this child an opportunity to go back to their family, and that's an amazing thing. That is really a blessing to be part of that system. So, and I do want to really sort of say a little shout out to my foster parents. When I make that call late at night and a foster parent says, yeah, sure, bring them, they don't ask race, gender, age, you know, they don't ask bring clothes, bring diapers, you know. It amazes me that we have such amazing human beings with such big hearts, just willing to take strangers into their home and treat them as their own. And I really do want to sort of, you know, and I know there's so many more people out there, and I really hope as though that we can reach those corners of Trinidad that people are interested in doing foster care.
What can we expect from your department in the coming months?
So we're actually trying to really push for kinship foster care. So what we're trying to do is to reach out to the other social services and do some sensitization, because they too may not know that kinship foster care exists because it fairly is new. So hopefully we can get some referrals from their department as well. We also have Foster Care and Adoption Month, which comes up in September every year. And we really do promote foster care around those times. We really push for it because we want persons to, no matter how many times we go out in the media and sort of do sensitization, people always say, you know, I didn't know we had that in Trinidad. Never heard of it before. So it's about getting the word out there. And my goal is, like I said, for foster care to be a normal household word eventually. It's something that, you know, everybody knows, not just the orphanages, as we used to call the children's homes. We now know that there's another system, another alternative care system for Trinidad and Tobago. And also to sort of put out there that we do have foster care in Tobago. A lot of persons don't know. We have some really excellent foster parents. We have about 9 kids in Tobago right now, but we really are appealing for Tobago to also let us know if you're interested in foster care.
Oh, nice. Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts, if anyone is interested in becoming a foster parent, feel free to contact the foster care unit at 627-0748 extension 40988, or you can email fostercare@ttchildren.org, or you can check out our website at ttchildren.org and check out our foster care section. That would give you, you can actually download the application form. There's frequently asked questions, but we really do encourage persons to give us a call, drop us an email, and we will get back to you. We really want to encourage persons. We have training ongoing throughout the year, different batches being sort of put forward. So it's never too late. It could be that you contact us and it's not right at this point in time, but hopefully we've planted the seed. You can pass on that knowledge to somebody else, maybe somebody in church, maybe your sister, maybe your neighbor. We really want to sort of spread the word out there and encourage persons to come forward. That's really the lasting message. You know, there's so many children in need of foster care, and even though it might be a short time, you can make a significant difference in a child's life. So we really do encourage persons to open their hearts and homes to foster care.
Excellent. And that's our show. Let me thank you, Mrs. Tewari-de Fague, for joining us on another episode of Delving Deeper.
Thank you very much.
Join us again this time next week for another episode of Delving Deeper. I am your host, Ayana Carter, and from all of us here, have a good night.